Thank you for joining us, Maya. It's so wonderful to see you again. You're looking healthy and bright and patient.
Thank you, Lila. Really grateful to Rotary and to you for having me here.
You know, I mentioned the word patience because it's so inherent in what peace is about. Could you share with us a little bit of your journey on the awareness of the place that peace has in our lives?
Absolutely. I really think that the prioritization of peace is in my own life grounded in stories of childhood. And I may not have been able to articulate the meaning of those stories until later. Probably when I became a teacher, I started seeing the patterns of peace and conflict in my own life. But as an example, when I was in perhaps the second or third grade in Semarang, we had a series of anti-Chinese riots in Indonesia, and neighbors who were very loving and kind to me, who cut sugarcane to give me as I walked to the corner store to collect stamps, were cruel and violent with the Chinese store owners across the way. They threw rocks into the windows. Other neighbors and community members pulled folks out of cars, overturned those cars and set them on fire. And so as a young child, I bore witness to the fact that people had shadow selves, that they were capable of great generosity, magnanimity, kindness, but also of great cruelty and violence, and that we contain both light and dark, and forces of creation and destruction, of love and meanness. And it helped me later to understand that we have to be vigilant in nurturing the very best in ourselves, and that those skills of compassion, of connection, of loving kindness can and should be taught and nurtured as early as possible. So when I became a teacher in New York and later in Hawaii, I started thinking about social studies as a means for deepening our humanity, for learning about the depths to which human beings can plunge, but also the heights to which they can rise. History lessons were opportunities for deep listening and reflection. And I taught, in addition to the facts and dates to be memorized, the skills of nonviolent communication and conflict transformation. Through stories of war and genocide, we learn about the perils of anger, but we also see enormous courage for those who are very different. People sacrificed a great deal. They were upstanders. So there are many lessons to be learned, and peace building and peace education became my life's mission.
You know, Rotarians are connected with the schools, with the Interact Club at the university, with Rotaract, even Early Act in middle schools. So we work on projects that are designed to improve, you know, the well-being of young people. What are your thoughts on how we can connect with young people? Because we're not as teachers, right? We're not their parents. How might we connect with the young people that we come in contact with?
Well, one thing is to really believe in them, to really bring them into the center, to trust them, to know that young people have a lot in the way of ideas and courage. They are brave, they are intersectional, and sometimes we do things for them, but not with them. And so what I would encourage is real intergenerational duet. I would encourage shared learning and spaces of connection, which during the pandemic have been so rare. And I think that now, as we emerge into a clearing, should be nourished as vigorously as possible. I also think that if you look at the movements that have taken place, whether for racial justice or climate justice, young people have been at the center of all of those storms, but also those movements to address the injustice and to find solutions and community sourced pathways and newly imagined visions of beloved communities. So we can look to young people for the strategies and technologies that they have used and share with them some of the historical context and wisdom that we have. My hope is that all of us kind of think of this time as one requiring a new kind of leadership, a navigational leadership. We are at the center of so many storms, and there is real danger that the isolation of the last year has led to too much apathy and anger, and whether it's because of the racial conflict or injustice or COVID, the separation might lead, in fact, to ongoing mistrust and deepening division. I know that there is also, though, an opportunity, and if we can make that opportunity bear fruit in intergenerational ways, I think we will see real progress. Navigational leaders carry multiple sources of knowledge and information and wisdom. We hold our vision with the help of ancestors and memories and that interconnected wisdom. So it is important that we bring everyone into the canoe, into the right? We don't know where we're going. We have to have courage, and young people can give us hope and courage. I know they help me as we go through. We have to listen very carefully to the wind, to the water, to the creatures beneath, and we have to consider new routes if the storms gather. We have to move through the doldrums, and we have to be brave. So I think that we need everyone on board, so to speak. And so what I would love to do is to try to invite young people to be at the center of that work and to lead us and to share, but also to ensure that we are helping them not to feel despondent, and that we are giving them opportunities for real connection to nature and community, so that they're not simply doing all of their work from behind a computer screen.
And that is actually the philosophical foundation, as well as the mission and vision of the organization that you started here in Hawaii, Seeds for Peace. We have been apprised of all the details, but when you talk about leadership, maybe as we wrap up our conversation for today, you could share some thoughts on how Rotarians can evoke the leadership from within themselves. They're always in action. We're always doing community projects with that in mind. But what I hear you saying, as with the young people, it really comes from inside us first.
Absolutely. This has been a time of transition, and we have to all realize that tranquility is not freedom from the storm, but peace within it. And this time has really been one when I have learned to listen more deeply. And Rotarians are people of action. You are servant leaders, and I thank you for all of that work. You see othering and you bring people closer together. You see conflict and you build bridges. You counter destructive acts with constructive ones. You help and guide and support. And listen for reimagined solutions too. But I think that this has been a time, I realize, when we need to engage in mindful listening practice that get in touch with the pain of others. Mental health issues are rampant. We need to find our collective way out of grief to resilience and courage. I know that I felt trapped at times, and that listening requires that we lean into our discomfort, sometimes hearing things that we don't want to know, allowing for difficult thoughts and emotions. So this is a time to be curious about what resides in our own hearts, make friends with, and fully experience vulnerability, and allow for the growth that the trauma of the last year can lead to. That post-traumatic growth is something that needs to happen now. Change has happened. It feels dangerous, and fresh trauma is always arriving. But our responses can be smarter than before. And obviously our solidarity and determination can be greater. But many of us don't listen to understand. We listen to respond, and we're rushing to express our opinions, or we feel like we know ourselves better than we do. And so slowing down in a way, and doing deep listening, double listening, reflecting on the meaning behind words, the feeling beneath them, and giving yourself ample room for the kind of self-care that can lead to creativity and meaningful connection, and that can bring a restoration of health and wellness to our bodies, to our minds, and to our communities, is something that I think that we can and should be thinking about now.
And what you're actually implying is that opening all that lets us also have the feeling of joy and gratitude. And so my last question to you is, what's next for Maya?
Well, speaking of that listening, I am starting a podcast, and I'm taking intractable, challenging, interesting and complex issues in our communities, and interviewing people who are finding creative and innovative solutions to address them. And I'm restoring a sense of wonder and adventure. And I feel like wondering is that wellspring for love, as it is said, and I think that when we wonder, we hear stories, but also feel the joy, and not simply the sorrow that are intended in those stories, and the collective liberation and hope for transformation that can come from restorative storytelling. Restorative narrative is not just about telling happy stories. It's about telling hard stories, but telling them in such a way that emphasizes the courage, the strength, the ingenuity, and the gifts. Auntie Pua Burgess talks a lot about storytelling, and she asks everyone to tell the story of their name, of their community, and of their gift. And so for me, I'm trying to begin accessing in myriad ways the gifts of our community. I think about the Aina Aloha Economic Futures and the myriad other community source solutions that have taken place this year. And that is true of so many communities around the world. And so what's next is hopefully an exploration of those many stories and gifts, and people who carry the secrets of the wind and water.
Well, you speak so much of love as synonymous with peace, and we want you to know that we love you, and we really, really appreciate who you are in the world, and your leadership. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for being with me, and I love you all, and am grateful for the love that you share with the world.
Thank
Aloha.
you. Aloha.